So today we'll be discussing about general anesthetics. Now, before I get into general anesthetics, we'll discuss what are anesthetics and what are the stages of general anesthesia. One second. Hmm. Right. So anesthetics essentially are drugs or any agents that will bring reversible loss of sensation. That's it. Anesthetics are only responsible for loss of sensation. They are not necessarily analgesics, neither are they necessarily skeletal muscle relaxants. That is the reason why you give so many supportive drugs along with anesthetics. Several anesthetics will not cause loss in pain sensation, and they will not cause what do you call, not complete suppression of pain. At least there will be loss of sensation, but to a certain extent some patients will feel pain. A lot of patients will feel pain depending on the drug. So that is why you'll have to give an analgesic as well, and you'll have to definitely give a skeletal muscle relaxant, sometimes even drugs like antihistamines to decrease acid secretion, and anticholinergics to decrease endocrine your bronchial secretions and all other secretions as such. Now coming to the stages of anesthesia. Stages of anesthesia. And depending on what textbook you're using, anesthesia can be spelled NAES or NES. Either way is fine. Okay. First, we'll have the stage of analgesia. In this stage, this is essentially from the beginning of inhalation. आप inhalation use कर रहे हैं. Let us suppose in this scenario you are using an inhalation type of anesthetic. You have IV anesthetics as well, but for this scenario, imagine that you are using inhalation. So the stage of analgesia will be the stage from the beginning. So the beginning of consciousness, from the point where the patient is actually conscious, and then they are inhaling drug to the point where they are losing consciousness. Okay. So from consciousness to loss of consciousness, I'm just writing it as LOC and C. Okay. In this stage, reflexes and respiration are normal. There is no change in their reflexes, neither there is any change in their respiratory function. And pain will be progressively abolished. It is not completely abolished. The sensation of pain will slightly decrease, but it is not very profound. Then there is the second stage, but this second stage is not seen a lot with modern day anesthetics. It used to be present with older anesthetics. Stage of delirium. So in this stage, the patient is going from loss of consciousness to beginning of surgical anesthesia. There is a difference between analgesia and surgical anesthesia. Surgical anesthesia is the stage in which you will operate. Okay, stage of delirium used to come in between in older this thing older drugs. Essentially what happens is, in this the patient might suddenly get excited, they might start shouting, they might show violent behavior. There will be psychological impairment. Essentially the patient will show how should I put it, their psyche will change in a way. All right. They will start shouting, crying, they might show violent behavior, they might become excited. But it is almost inconspicuous with modern anesthetics. It is not a problem with modern anesthetics. Pehle hota tha ye. Nowadays we directly go from stage of analgesia to stage of surgical anesthesia. This is where you are performing the surgery, and surgical anesthesia, the stage of surgical anesthesia itself has four different planes. So four different levels, imagine. Okay. As anesthesia passes to deeper planes, respiratory depression is seen. So you would want to stay somewhere in the first and second zone, or first and second plane of surgical anesthesia. The deeper you go into surgical anesthesia, the closer you are going to paralysis. Okay, now bear in mind anesthesia is a drug that is causing loss of sensation which is reversible. If you give a high enough dose, it can cause permanent problems. Okay, I'll tell you what happens later on if you keep on giving very high amounts of anesthesia. That is why there is a special doctor that comes in called anesthetist. I'm not sure whether you've ever participated in a surgery or not. There is a person called anesthetist. Sometimes there is a proper team of anesthetists. Okay, they will be responsible for making sure that the patient's anesthesia is maintained throughout the surgery. So for the duration of the surgery, they will be present. Okay. If it is a small surgery, generally the main anesthetist will come, induce anesthesia, because you have to be very accurate with the doses in this scenario. थोड़ा भी गड़बड़ हो गया वो तो patient कोमा में चले जाता. So once they have induced the anesthesia, they will leave one of their assistants. Or sometimes if the surgery is slightly longer, let's suppose, and a little more complicated, the whole team will stay. Generally speaking, most of the times the whole team will stay. Now, in stage of surgical anesthesia, as I told you, there are different planes, and as soon as you are hitting surgical anesthesia, you can perform surgery. Stage one, stage two, it is fine. As you keep on increasing the dose, or as the patient starts falling deeper into the planes of surgical anesthesia, there is a chance that they are going into dangerous territory. By the time the patient reaches stage 4, they are reaching a point of respiratory depression. Okay. There will be on the deeper levels of surgical anesthesia, respiratory depression is seen. You'll also see a little bit of respiratory depression on stage 1, plane 1, but it is not as profound as plane 4. Loss will occur, reflexes will be lost to almost a complete extent, and muscles will relax. And this is also because you are giving what you call muscle relaxant, and some anesthetics will have the property of muscle relaxation. Not all, some modern day anesthetics will have the property of muscle relaxants, but it is better to give a skeletal muscle relaxant on the side. And the patient's pupils will be dilated. Okay. Now, onset of regular respiration definite generally means that their anesthesia is breaking. ठीक है. If they are if they are respiring normally, or if let's suppose they are having very spontaneous breathing, it means that there is something wrong. Normally they should be slightly depressed. The respiration will be slightly depressed in case of surgical anesthesia, not completely depressed, but they'll be slightly depressed. That is when you start performing surgery. You the patient's respiratory rate will fall a little bit, their pupils will dilate, and reflexes are lost along with their muscles becoming very relaxed. That is when you start performing surgery. Then finally, the fourth stage, and the stage that you want to avoid, um, stage that you should not put the patient in, stage of medullary paralysis. So this is seen only in overdosage. Okay, medullary paralysis occurs only in overdoses. As I told you, as you keep on going deeper and deeper into surgical anesthesia, you risk the cause of coma, and you risk going towards paralysis. This medullary paralysis is the result of going very deep into surgical anesthesia or giving a very high dose. At this point, what will happen is respiration completely stops. The patient will not be breathing at this point. Circulation stops, circulatory failure occurs, and death might follow. You will generally see that the pupils are very widely dilated in this. Muscles will completely lose their tone, they'll become flabby, and pulse as well will become thready pulse upload. I'm not sure whether you've seen or not. You'll not be able to gauge the pulse. It will also become imperceptible. ठीक है. Pulse को check करना बहुत मुश्किल है आता, because the patient's pulse will become very erratic, and you might not see a pulse altogether. Sometimes it will become very imperceptible, you might not be able to perceive it. BP will also fall. Okay. Medullary paralysis is when your medulla essentially is undergoing paralysis. There is depression of your medulla, and all of your body's function are shutting down. Okay. It is very hard to bring the patient back from medullary paralysis. That is why generally you operate in the area of surgical anesthesia. It's a very fine line between surgical anesthesia and medullary paralysis. That is why the job of an anesthetist is very important. So those are the four stages of anesthesia. I hope you understood this. If you have doubts, or if you want me to repeat any of these stages, please feel free to ask. Okay. Now coming to the classification of anesthetics, there are two different classes: inhalational. So certain anesthetics you will inhale, and some others you will give IV. Okay, both ways are viable. Now inhalational may again you have two classes, which are gases and liquids. Sometimes you can inhale liquids as well. Okay, small particulate matter of liquids can be given as inhalational agents. IV may you'll have inducing agents, dissociative anesthetics, and opioid analgesics. In some textbooks, you might also find IV may BZDs are included, benzodiazepines, diazepam, lorazepam, midazolam, all of that. Now, coming to inhalational anesthetics, before I get into the drug parts of inhalational anesthetics, I have to explain how inhalational anesthetics work. So, have you ever seen inhalational anesthetics being used? Ever seen a surgery either on video or live? आप लोगों को सर्जरी का पार्ट बनाए थे? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So inhalational anesthetics, what you do is up you basically make the patient inhale the drug and you start counting in reverse. So यहाँ पर क्या कर रहा है? Let us suppose you first make sure that the patient is completely relaxed. You will give them certain pre-anesthetic medications that they are completely so that they are completely ready for the surgery and they are prepped for the surgery. And आप क्या करते हैं? You will give the anesthetic and you start counting down. So 10, 9, 8, 7. By the time you generally reach 6 to 4, the patient should be out. Okay, they should be unconscious, and they will start going slightly deeper as time goes in. Okay. Now, inhalational anesthetics, what they do is they will enter into how they work is they will enter into your lung. Essentially, you are breathing it in, right? So they will enter into your lung. They are going to your alveolus. They are entering into the blood vessels near the alveolus, and from that blood vessel, they are entering into your brain, wherein they are causing loss of consciousness. Okay, that is the mechanism. So they are the gas or liquid, whatever it is. Let us suppose you are using inhalational anesthetic. This is entering into your lung. You are respiring it in, going to your alveolus, blood vessels, and from blood vessels it is reaching systemic circulation, and finally brain. Okay, you will have or you will achieve good amount of anesthesia or the proper anesthetic effect only when serum concentration or blood concentration of anesthetic reaches a certain level. I'll repeat once again. You will achieve proper anesthesia or proper anesthetic effect only when the drug concentration of the serum concentration of your drug achieves a certain level. Okay? When blood has enough amount of anesthetic drug, that is when it can continuously supply it to the brain, and the brain will shut down for a period of time. Okay? You will have loss of consciousness. Certain areas of the brain will shut down, not all. Okay? Now, when you want to decrease or when you want to excrete the drug, what will happen is the exact opposite. So blood vessels say it will go back into the alveolus say lungs, and you will exhale it out. In certain cases, anesthetics, some part of anesthetic is also metabolized by other part of your body like lungs. In that scenario, they might be excreted in a different route, but most of the time inhalational anesthetics are exhaled out. So poisoning होने का chance कम रहता है इसमें. ठीक है. लेट अस सपोज इनहेलेशनल एनेस्थेटिक आप दे रहे एक पेशेंट को एंड डोज ज़्यादा हो गया. इफ यू वांट टू रिमूव द ड्रग फ्रॉम द पेशेंट्स बॉडी, you can simply induce hyperventilation. If you are able to induce hyperventilation in the patient will start exhaling more often. ठीक है, उन्होंने अगर हाइपर वेंटिलेट कर रहे हैं, दे विल ब्रीथ इन क्विकली एंड दे विल ब्रीथ आउट क्विकली. At this point you are not giving any more anesthetic. Let us suppose the patient has you realize that increased dose of anesthetic has been given and the patient is showing signs of medullary paralysis. At that point, if you are inducing respiratory increasing respiratory rate or inducing hyperventilation, the patient will start exhaling quicker, and as a result what will happen is the amount of anesthetic that is present in your blood will be exhaled out quickly. So you are bringing the patient back quickly. That is one big advantage of inhalational anesthetics. There is very less chance that toxicity can occur if you know what you are doing. Okay, if you are able to induce hyperventilation, it is very quick to reverse a condition in if you are using inhalational anesthetic. IV may thoda problem hota because once you give IV, it is very hard to remove the drug. It will take more time. Even if you are performing hemoperfusion or dialysis or something like that, it will take time. ठीक है, and that time might be very precious. That time the brain might be undergoing permanent damage. So inhalational anesthetics will have their own certain advantage. This is one advantage. Chance of toxicity is less compared to IV. So I hope you understood this mechanism, how inhalational anesthetics are working. They are reaching your lung. From lung, they will achieve a certain concentration in blood vessel, and only when that certain concentration is reached, will they show an effect on your brain. If that concentration is not achieved, the patient will not go into, anesthesia. Essentially, they will not completely lose their consciousness, or they will not go into proper surgical anesthesia. They might be hanging around in the stage of analgesia. Now, coming to the drugs that are a part of inhalational anesthetics, we'll discuss two drugs. First of all, we have nitrous oxide. Okay. Nitrous oxide has a very slightly sweetish odor and it produces a light anesthesia. As it produces a light anesthesia, uh, the problem is that you'll have to substitute another type of anesthesia with it. If you give only nitrous oxide, it will not be enough. As it is producing only very light anesthesia, you'll have to give supportive anesthetics or supportive drugs with it so that the patient is going deeper into anesthetic. And it will not have any depression of your respiratory or vasomotor center. So there will be no decrease in the rate of respiration, neither will be any depression, there be any depression in the BP or vasomotor center बोले तो your blood pressure, essentially your cardiac tone and आपके blood vessel का tone जो रहता वो कम नहीं होता nitrous oxide से. The advantage is that it is a decent analgesic and it has very good induction and recovery. Induction is a process in which so you are inducing the anesthesia. Essentially, induction means the point from which you are making the patient inhale the drug to the point where the patient is actually going into surgical anesthesia. So any anesthetic that has good induction, it means that उनका जो time रहता from the point where you are giving the drug to the point where they are reaching surgical anesthesia, that is small or short. So I'll repeat once again. Induction or any drug, any anesthetic that has good induction, it means that it will induce quickly and without any problems as well. So from the point where the patient is conscious to the point where they are into surgical anesthesia, what time period is how you define induction. Okay. Also the if any other problems are occurring or not, if it is smooth, if the patient is not having any other problems, and if the time taken for this anesthetic to work is small, then you generally refer to that anesthetic as a good inductor or induction is good bolte uski. And so is recovery. So induction and recovery both are good in this scenario in nitrous oxide. Okay. They are both rapid and smooth. They occur very very quickly. Both induction and recovery. Recovery is the point wherein from surgical anesthesia the patient is coming back into consciousness, normal consciousness. Okay. Now sometimes in certain anesthetics, what will happen is the patient will have post-operative pain or some of the other problem might occur because of the anesthetic. So if the recovery is smooth, it generally means that the patient does not have any problems while recovering from surgical anesthesia, and even after, post-operatively, they will not face any other, pain issue or any other issue. It is a non-irritant and non-inflammable kind of anesthetic as well. There will be no reaction with flame, and it is a non-irritant. Because it is a non-irritant kind of anesthetics, it will not induce any secretions from your body. As I told you, sometimes certain anesthetics are irritant, and if you are giving an irritant anesthetic, it is imperative that you'll have to give a drug like anticholinergics, because if they are irritant, they will stimulate your mucous membranes, and as a result, because of which what will happen is the bronchospasms might occur, bronchial secretions will occur, salivary secretions will occur, gastric secretions will occur. अगर non-irritant anesthetic दे सक रहे, if you have the choice, then it is better to give this. You can avoid giving anticholinergic drugs in that scenario. Now, the disadvantage, as I told you, is that it produces very light anesthesia and it can only be given with other anesthetics. Along with that, there is one big disadvantage, especially on long term usage. This specifically happens to OT staff. Nitrous oxide, upon even low doses of nitrous oxide for long term, if someone is being exposed to nitrous oxide for a long period of time, even at low doses, it can cause impairment of DNA synthesis. Why is this important? Let us suppose in OT staff, there is a nurse or the surgeon who are pregnant. Okay? Let us suppose either the surgeon or anybody in the surgery team or anybody in the support staff during the surgery is pregnant, and for the duration of the surgery they are performing or they are participating in several surgeries where nitrous oxide is being used. What happens is continuous exposure. Now, because they are surgical team, उनको भी थोड़ा exposure होता, a little bit, but even that exposure is a problem, because that long term low dose exposure of nitrous oxide will lead to impairment of DNA synthesis. As a result, especially in pregnant women, it will lead to fetal abnormalities. ठीक है? That is why whenever you are using what you call nitrous oxide, do not include, make sure that your OT staff does not have any pregnant lady, or uh, if you have a pregnant lady, better not to use nitrous oxide. Depends, आप कभी nitrous oxide को substitute नहीं कर सकते, or sometimes might be the staff member is indispensable, you cannot let them go, so you have to use your own judgment in that scenario. But in any case, a single exposure will not be a big problem. Long term exposure to low doses will be a big problem. Okay, so there is that. Those are the disadvantages of nitrous oxide. Then we have another inhalational type of anesthetic called halothane. Halothane is a liquid. ठीक है? Nitrous oxide जो gas था ना, this is another type of inhalational anesthetic which is a liquid. This has a very sweet odor. It is non-irritant and it is inflammable. Sorry, non-inflammable. Advantage is that it is a very potent type of anesthetic. Generally, induction is very rapid and very smooth. Induction will generally take within 2 to 5 minutes. So within 2 to 5 minutes, the patient will be anesthetized. Okay, they will reach surgical anesthesia within 2 to 5 minutes. It is that rapid and that quick. Okay, as it is a non-irritant, obviously it will not cause any salivary or bronchial excretions, secretion. Sorry. Sometimes though, shivering might occur in certain patients while you're inducing in anesthesia. Shivering might occur, and there is a low chance that the patient might have post-operative nausea and vomiting. Low chance though, only in few patients. Recovery is also very rapid. ठीक है, जस्ट एज क्विक, जितना क्विक इंडक्शन रहता उतना ही क्विक या उतना ही स्मूथ एटलीस्ट रिकवरी भी रहता पेशेंट का. Now, this is neither a good, the big disadvantages are this is neither a good analgesic, neither a good muscle relaxant, skeletal muscle relaxant. So you will have to give analgesic and muscle relaxant with this. Okay, not a good analgesic. or SMR. ठीक है. Another thing is that it has direct effect on your cardiac muscle. It is a myocardiac depressant. Cardiac output and BP along with heart rate, all of them will fall. ठीक है. So because of halothane, BP, heart rate, and cardiac output, all of them will decrease. And another problem is that whenever you are giving halothane, it will sensitize the heart to arrhythmogenic functions of adrenaline. So whenever adrenaline is being exposed to halothane, whenever adrenaline is being exposed to your heart under the pressure of halothane, matlab, let us suppose the patient is anesthetized, and by some chance the body is secreting adrenaline, and that adrenaline is coming across your heart. The adrenaline is acting on your heart. There is a good chance that it can cause arrhythmias. I'll repeat once again. Halothane sensitizes your heart to the arrhythmogenic functions of of adrenaline. It means that if the patient is anesthetized using halothane and their body secretes adrenaline because of whatever reason, that adrenaline might induce arrhythmia, bradycardia or tachycardia in the patient. Okay, under the influence of halothane. Also, this is a respiratory depression. Significant respiratory depression will occur in under the effect of halothane. In certain patients, in about 1 is to 50,000 patients, it can cause fatal severe hepatitis. Okay? This is because almost all of halothane will get excreted through your this thing through your lungs, but 20% of halothane gets metabolized by your liver. As a result, that metabolite which is being formed starts damaging your kidneys. There is a chance that it can damage your kidneys, and almost in 1 in 50,000 patients, they will have a more severe kind of toxicity that will lead to hepatitis. उसको fatal severe hepatitis बोलते हैं. Last disadvantage is malignant hypothermia. When you are discussing anticholinergics, I told you, not anticholinergics, when I was discussing about SMRs, I told you, whenever succinylcholine is combined with halothane, it can cause malignant hypothermia when, calcium release is significantly high inside the muscles, and it will cause increase in body temperature, sudden increase in body temperature. You have to give dantrolene and you have to externally cool the patient down. ठीक है. So succinylcholine and halothane को नहीं मिला सकते. That is another disadvantage of halothane. So it is not a good analgesic or muscle relaxant. It will directly impair or decrease your myocardial function. Myocardial depressant है. BP, heart rate and cardiac output पूरे गिर जाते. Respiratory depression होता. In some patients, fatal severe hepatitis might occur because 20% of halothane is metabolized by liver. The rest of it is exhaled out, but that 20% might cause formation of a metabolite of halothane, which can cause liver damage. And finally, if it is being combined with succinylcholine, there is a risk of malignant hypothermia. It does not mean that always all patients will have malignant hypothermia, but there is a risk. That is why, and it is a life-threatening condition. So generally, mixing of halothane and succinylcholine is not done. दोनों को साथ में नहीं देते. ठीक है. Another disadvantage is that it will decrease renal blood flow. Halothane, because it is decreasing renal blood flow, it might decrease the GFR of the patient. This will become more apparent when the surgery is going on for a long period of time. उनका glomerular filtration rate बहुत depress हो जाता. Okay, so that is about halothane. Tomorrow we'll discuss intravenous anesthetics. Okay. IV anesthetics, there are disadvantages and there are disadvantages as well. Their induction will be even more quicker than inhalational, but because of that, the recovery also will be slower. आप directly blood में दे रहे हैं ना, so यहाँ पर जैसा inhalational drugs में you are giving through the air passageway. So first it has to go to the lungs, from lungs alveolus में से it has to diffuse into your blood. So it will take time for the drug to reach from your alveoli to your blood. In IV, you are directly giving the drug into the blood of the patient, so it is essentially induction will be faster. But the disadvantage is that quick elimination will not occur. जैसा अगर inhalational drugs में dose ज़्यादा हो गया, तो you can simply induce hyperventilation and the patient will be fine, or at least you'll be able to quickly remove the drug. In IV, that will not be the case. So anyway, we'll go into more details about intravenous anesthetics tomorrow, right? Types and all that.